Welcome into an all-new betting preview for this week's RBC Canadian Open. Obviously, there is a lot of things taking our attention away from a betting preview for the RBC Canadian Open. We'll talk about those in just a second. Andy Lack is here. Hey, Andy, what a day.
Yeah, if Rory's quote walking off the green on 18 last year is a shot at Greg Norman, a subtle under the radar shot at Greg Norman, can only imagine what Rory leads off with if he does collect the third Canadian Open this week, which honestly feels like a small drop of in terms of what happens this week. Just feels like a small, very tiny drop of water in the entire golf landscape. But that is the world that we're currently living in on this Tuesday morning.
Yeah, obviously this morning news breaks that the PGA Tour, Live Golf, the DP World Tour will merge. There will be a new for-profit entity that kind of houses all of the assets. I have already kind of fired out some thoughts and some opinions and spoke about it on CBS Sports HQ, and we did an emergency podcast. But I'm interested, Andy, in your thoughts just a few hours into what the future of golf could look like.
Yeah, I mean, this hit like a wildfire this morning. I told you right before we went hot. I was actually recording a deep dive on Los Angeles Country Club at 7 a.m. with my friend across the pond, Steve Bamford. And then my phone, I mean, I've never gotten more I don't think, I can't think of another situation in my life where I've gotten more texts in such a short period of time. And, you're keep looking at your phone while trying to talk about the topography of the third hole at LACC and how the Barranca is going to affect off the tee strategies. And it's like, man, what is going on what's going on in terms of like, who are the winners in this? Who are the losers in this? There's a Canadian Open this week. The US Open, arguably the second biggest golf event of the entire year, is 8 days away. And the golf world gets completely flipped on its head, according to some news on CNN this morning, which I honestly thought at first, when I first started seeing the text, was like a joke or a bit. And then I found out that not to be the case. There's millions of things to unpack. You've already done a podcast on it. I'm going to talk more about this on, news stations later this evening. So I'll keep it brief. I think the Jimmy Dunn piece is a fascinating subplot of this all, but in terms of what the future of golf looks like, very, very different. I'm sure. I think we'll see something along the lines of, a lot more. I'm sure there'll be a team aspect to this. I don't know how the interplay will work between competitions outside of the majors that will feature live golfers and PGA Tour golfers. I have to wonder if this whole big elevated event idea that the PGA Tour essentially rolled out for 1 year, does that get scrapped now? Does that get replaced by some sort of Saudi Aramco team competition? Is live in the fall now? Is there an event every week? And a lot of the time it's a PGA Tour event, but 30% of the time it's a live event. And where is the DP World Tour in all of this too as well? So the short answer to a very complicated question is that hopefully there's this big player meeting at 4 p.m. in Canada, which, if Jay survives, that will be a huge surprise to me, given the fact that it appears that most of these guys, including some of the tour's best players, Colin Morikawa, for example, Max Homa, found out about this news just like you and I found out about this news. So short answer to a very complicated question is I think that the golf landscape is going to look quite different in the upcoming months.
Yeah, short. There are way more questions than answers, like you rattled off, which I think are all valid questions. I'll be interested to see, to me, there's no way that Jay Monahan can be the commissioner of the PGA Tour any longer, and that his role, that role for him has an expiration date on it. I think that whether the tour players have figured this out or not, their rights are going away. Things that they controlled previously, they will not control moving forward. And you could argue, hey, the NBA is not a player run organization, so why does sport have to be? It's a valid question, but the toothpaste is out of the tube, right? Like once it is a player run organization, it's going to be hard to go back from that. And the fact that many of the players, if not all of the players, didn't know about this, there's a reason for that. It's because they're getting shafted here and they're getting the rug pulled out from underneath them. Obviously, very good day for Liv. Obviously, I think from a financial perspective of this new entity, great day. The tour players should be furious, and I honestly think I don't think it'll happen, but there is a non-zero chance, and I would almost encourage it. They should actually strike from the RBC Canadian Open and not play it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, think about Rory. Think about all these guys that were at the forefront of doing a lot of Jay Monahan's bidding over the past year and a half.
All of yes.
Think about what Jay Monahan said when he came in the booth at this tournament last year, right? Even the language that he used, he refused to call Liv anything other than the Saudi-backed golf league.
Correct.
He wouldn't even refer to it by its name. He had that little respect for it. And I actually think what it seems like happened, first of all, is Greg Norman just out?
It seems that way because he was informed of this like minutes before they went on CNBC this morning. So yeah, it seems like Greg is out as well.
So does it sound to you like the situation went, and if I'm just making a broad guess of how things might have gone behind closed doors between the PGA Tour and Liv, was Jay basically said, "Hey, I'll take the money. Let's do this together. You guys tech Greg out, but essentially we can do this thing together and keep me on.
And I've got to be the CEO and I've got to be on the board.
And you can be, and Yasir Al-Rumayyan can be the chairman of the board, and we'll put Jimmy Dunn on the board and we'll just do this thing together. Greg's the guy that gets screwed. My players maybe get a lot more money, but also kind of look like fools. And also think about guys like, think about a guy like Hideki, who was offered like $300 million reportedly by Liv, turns that down to stay with the PGA Tour. I mean, now where do the players stand to make way more money off of this because there's Saudi investment in it too? And so it's like a situation where Jay kind of feels like, hey, I kind of made my players look like fools along the way, but they're still going to get richer at the end of the day. And I think if you're asking me for like a one sentence review of this at the end of the day, the one thing that we learn, and this is the same thing when my friends were asking me, where does a guy like Jimmy Dunn stand in this, who's based his entire career being outspoken against 9/11, who loses over 66 employees in 9/11, who bans the Liv players from the Seminole Pro-Am, and is completely outspoken against Liv, now serving on a board chaired by Yasir Al-Rumayyan. It's just, is business just business? And leverage is leverage, and it's all posturing. And at the end of the day, Monahan finally got his number and found out the most suitable thing to do for him to make the most money, stay in power, and everyone else to make the most money. And everything along the way was just, as Roman would say in Succession, it's all just BS. Everything else is just BS.
The only pitch to the players has to be money, right? I mean, so Jay already alienated the middle and lower tier of the PGA Tour by creating elevated events and basically delegating them to a lesser version of the tour. And now he has alienated his best players, who he asked to carry water for him for 2 years and now look like fools. And in return, I believe the pitch has to be lots and lots and lots of money, right? They are going, like, I imagine the plan is here's the pitch. You guys are no longer independent contractors. You are, you lose a lot of the power that you had. John Rahm, will now play on Team Callaway, and in return, you will get $50 million guaranteed a year, or you know what I mean? Like, that can be the only pitch, because everything else or nothing else makes sense.
So many unanswered questions. Where is TGL in this? Do you think Tiger had any idea that this was going to happen?
How could he not? I mean,
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
know,
yes, I agree, but
it seems so close to the vest. Rory hasn't made a statement. Tiger hasn't made a statement. Jack hasn't made a statement. Davis Love III, who runs like half the events on the PGA Tour, and his organization, didn't make a statement. If you were trying to curry as much positive spin on this as possible, you would have had all that lined up. But by lining all that up in advance, you have to talk to those people, get their opinions, potentially hear that they don't want to be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, it seems like 3 people made this decision.
Right. There was a lot of bait and switching going on. And at the end of the day, it seems like this deal was made in a room occupied by like 2 or 3 people.
Right.
What happens to Liv's TV deal with CW? Is the where does CBS stand in this? Where does NBC stand in this? Did the majors know about this? Did Augusta know? Was Fred Ridley in that room? Was Mike Wan in that room? Where do we stand on the USGA rolling the ball back, but now this new potential massive endeavor? Are they gonna juice the balls and hit them into simulators and do Monday nights on TGL, Tuesday nights in Jeddah, and Thursday nights at Riviera? What TV channel is all that going to be on? Is one going to be on CW, one going to be broadcast on YouTube, and one on CBS? There's far more questions than answers right now, but this feels to me like Monahan and MBS and Yasir and all the guys that live probably had this conversation and felt that it was a situation that needed to be acted on quickly and briskly, and they felt strongly in what they had to do, and everybody else is just kind of picking up the pieces, right?
Yes. So again, there's 900 questions that are all very, very good that we don't have any idea about how they're going to work. The only path in which I think this falls apart. So the way that I understand this, you've got the PGA Tour, which is going to continue to operate and basically do like administrative, like the events and stuff like that. Then they're going to move all of their assets to this new entity that has not yet been named. And that's going to do a lot of the business side of things, in which Jay Monahan is going to be, the CEO of. If the players said, Jay, you're out of your freaking mind, we vote Jay out of here, we replace him with a commissioner who now runs the PGA Tour, who does not work with this new entity. Because Jay's getting it from both sides here. He says, okay, well, the PGA Tour, because I'm the commissioner, I agree to work with new entity. And I'm also the CEO of new entity, so I agree to work with the PGA Tour. Well, if he's no longer the commissioner of the PGA Tour, and that new commissioner, probably Tiger Woods, says, no, we're not moving our assets to this new entity, and you guys can go figure out whatever you're doing elsewhere, that's how this falls apart. So that is why I think, whether the players realize it or not, their only power left, if this thing gets inked and goes, like, they're going to lose all their power. Their only power left is to not be a part of this and get rid of Jay by any means necessary. Now, I don't know if that's maybe the players look at this and say, hey, we're going to get a, shit ton of cash. We don't care. Like, whatever. This is fine. But I think that's the only way this game's out differently.
I don't think they can get rid of Jay. I think I think the whole part of this was that Jay created a situation with the amount of the Saudis basically leveraged everything that they were doing with Liv and reinvested that in the PGA Tour, with Jay being able to be like, okay, we're going to take your money and do business with you guys as long as I can save my ass.
Right.
So how does Jay kind of feels like he covered his ass at all costs.
But Jay has to answer to somebody. Roger Goodell answers to somebody. He answers to the owners, right? So Jay Monahan answers to someone. Doesn't he answer to the players board?
Yasir, I think, is who he answers to.
But not on the PGA Tour.
Sure, not on the PGA Tour, but what is the PGA Tour anymore? I mean, what?
Well, the PGA Tour is going to continue to run and continue to exist as a 501c3, right? So it is going to someone is in charge of Jay. I was under the impression it's the player board.
Yeah, but me too, right? Like me too, but if it was the player board, then where was the player board in all of these negotiations?
That's what I'm saying. I think that Jay got himself a job and then is going to try to sell this to the board. Like
at 4 p.m. in Canada.
Yes, exactly. We
got to talk a little bit about the ensuing tournament, but just to put a bow on all of this, like just totally macro view for, let's just take off all of our business hats and our PGA Tour fan hats and our LIV fan hats. Like if you're a fan of golf, this is a good day or a bad day.
Strictly a fan of golf, probably good, because you get, in theory, more of the best players in one spot, as long as it doesn't go back to the issue we had originally on the PGA Tour, which is you have a bunch of stars, but they only play together 5 times a year. If you can keep all the stars in the world of golf and have them play 18 to 20 times together, it is a good thing for fans.
I think I agree, but my only counterpoint would be, does this almost prove the LIV model all along? And I find this to be, a lot of people have been saying this. A lot of people have been saying that this has become crystallized with LIV, is that there's really only 4 weeks of the year that matter. And as somebody that spends another 35 weeks of the year spending hours breaking down these golf courses and breaking down these tournaments, I kind of object that. I want to object that. And I still always have wanted to believe that like Riviera Week is special. The Memorial is special. Torrey Pines is special. Bay Hill is special, and now I wonder if what the schedule looks like looking forward is, we get the stars maybe playing together more often. Maybe we get a LIV versus PGA team thing that everybody has been clamoring for quite some time. But there's something about this whole thing that feels a bit hollow to me. And it still feels to me like, man, are we just ready to accept as golf fans, again, like Roman in Succession said, that outside of the Masters, US Open, and PGA, it's all just BS and it's Callaway versus the cliques? Like that's my concern. Does the integrity of some of these events on the PGA Tour that my career is based on, that your career is based on, that I still like to believe in my heart, mean something? Is it like you said, Callaway versus the cliques at Riviera? Or, that's the part that feels hollow to me and depressing to me as a golf fan is, maybe we do get to see Brooks versus Rory 4 or 5 times a year, but what are the stakes of Brooks versus Rory 4 or 5 times a year? $6 million? Does that where does that count in terms of his career victories? How many people are in that field? So that's the only thing where I'm like, I just need more information to find out. But it almost does feel like, yeah, I mean, maybe the majors are the only winners at the end of the day when this is all said and done.
4 p.m. Eastern time is the player meeting with Jay Monahan in Canada. Matt Fitzpatrick has canceled his presser. He was not going to be the guy to sit in the crosshairs and be the first player to talk about it. He has canceled his. There's a question here that says, Rick, what are the odds that after the players meeting today that we get a mass wave of WDs? It's tough because, these guys know how important it is to the city, to the country, to the fans.
National Open is tough.
But I think there is a non-zero chance, let's call it 10%, that if things go very sideways in this players meeting, that you could get 12 to 20 guys who WD. I don't think you'll get like a strike, but I think that depending on if things go really sideways, you could get a couple, 24 guys who feel like they're going to have their voice be heard one way or another, and they're going to WD. We'll see.
Yeah, and I guess we could use this to transition into talking about some of these golfers.
So here's what we'll do. We're going to reset here, and we're going to do the odds board and matchups and talk about one and done and everything else that's changing in this very fluid Canadian Open. We're going to start that conversation on the other side. Andy Lack is one of the nerdiest golf guys that I know, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. His knowledge of course architecture allows him to create some of the most actionable course previews available, and he offers up pure expertise on his own podcast, the Inside Golf Podcast. Twice a week, he offers course breakdowns, DFS, and betting strategy for every PGA Tour event, and he expands the universe by bringing on entertaining and knowledgeable guests who can offer a different viewpoint of the game that we love. Follow Inside Golf Pod on Twitter and download Inside Golf wherever you download podcasts. All right, we're back. A little bit of a reset here to the Canadian Open. Here's the betting board. It's via Odds Checker, so you can see the best numbers available. There is one man who stands at the top going for a three-peat in Rory McIlroy at 5-1. Then you get a load of golfers between 12 and 20. Terrell Hatton, Sam Burns, Cam Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, Justin Rose, and Shane Lowry. So, Andy, as you start assessing a golf course that we haven't seen yet in competition, the top heavy, I'll call it, nature of this board, how would you go about breaking out your clicks?
Well, I just want to talk about Rory McIlroy for a brief instant, and I can give an angle on the off the course stuff and then my actual personal opinion on how he fits on this golf course as the two-time defending champion. There was a comment in the chat that I thought was interesting, was that, did Rory sort of start to soften his stance on the whole live thing in the previous months because he was aware of some of this stuff. There's legitimately no way for us to know. Rory played some excellent golf last year when he was in the middle of a bunch of off the course stuff last year. But at the end of the day, there's really no way for us to know how Rory feels about everything, about how he feels about playing golf right now, until Rory really says something. And at, a golf course where, he's 4-1, there's a lot of emphasis on being able to score and make a ton of birdies, in my opinion, inside 100 yards. It's just, it's probably some smoke that I don't need this week at this price. I don't know if I see him like, imploding and missing the cut. I think that he's probably still like a walking top 10 at a golf course like this. He's got such a tremendous history at this event, and this event tends to set up its golf courses in a very similar fashion. This golf course in Oakdale, which we didn't get to talk about too much, it's a Stanley Thompson design with Robbie Robinson and Ian Andrew. I mean, all those three guys were the same guys that laid their hands on St. George's last year. And I think that there's a lot of similar bones to St. George's to this golf course, as Stanley Thompson and Ian Andrew have very specific styles in the way that they bunker their golf courses. But if I'm saying one thing about this golf course, it's that I do think it's objectively easier than St. George's. And Rory was able to get to 19 under par last year at St. George's. And I just think, there's so many par fours where if Rory's driving the ball 340 like he was before, we're talking 30-yard approach shots onto these greens. So, the price with Rory is tough. I'm probably turning my attention to guys a little bit, farther down the board in this 20 to range section. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll remove all of like the chaos stuff around Rory this week and like, whatever. I agree with your assessment in that there's going to be a lot of short shots in or a lot of wedges in for Rory, which he was not very good at on Sunday and hasn't been as good with this year. I also kind of am more worried about this thing, to get to 19, 20, 25 under par, whatever it's going to take, you gotta make some putts. And Rory has objectively been way worse with the flat stick in 2023 than like basically all of 22. And then the lead up to this event last year. So I think when you combine the statistical concerns, don't even consider the noise and the odds, which are 5-1, which are some of the shortest we've seen in the last couple of years for any golfer. I just don't see myself getting it.
I agree. And, I do think that this is a really top heavy field, but that there are some really other great elite, not at Rory's level, but great options in this kind of next tier of guys with Hatton and Burns and Young and Fitz and Connors and Rose and Lowry. I think of this group, the one that I am most inclined to bet is probably Lowry, who is a guy who was also phenomenal at St. George's last year, who has been hitting the ball tremendously right now. If you look at, he's gained off the tee in 6 straight starts. He's getting an approach in 8 straight starts. Like, the ball striking has been absolutely phenomenal with Lowry. The big question with him is, can the guy make enough putts? But there are so many players in this top end range that carry similar concerns. You mentioned it with Rory. Cameron Young has way worse concerns with the putter right now as well. So if you're telling me, like, yes, do I believe that, there are some concerns about, I always think that it's a bit subjective when guys say, can this guy get to 19 or 20 under? These guys are shooting 62s at Medalist every day. Like, it's just they can all do that if they're playing well on the right golf course, right? So I would probably say from a ball striking standpoint, I'm just still really enamored with what Shane Lowry is doing. And with Cameron Young, for example, it seems like the putter is getting worse, whereas Lowry is starting to gain positively with the flat stick and gaining now in 2 straight starts.
Yeah, and just to kind of put that into perspective, Cam Young hanging a 16-1 number at its longest, Shane Lowry at 20-1. I'm on board. I'm fine with Lowry here. I think that is, I think that's a pretty solid click to make. I have been staring at the 14-1 number on Sam Burns for a while, just because, like, if I'm betting outright, if I like, you'll never find me in a scenario where I'm taking Sam Burns in a matchup. I just think he's like too volatile. I think he's still working a lot of equipment stuff that he dealt with after Riviera, but we've seen upside. I know he can get hot with the putter. He's played better recently. And if it is going to come down to like those wedge areas, right? The ability to just kind of hit it far enough. This is not a particularly long golf course for a par 72. Get a wedge in hand and take as many birdie opportunities. Like, I trust Sam Burns to at least have the ceiling that is higher than, I don't know, like Corey Connors, maybe higher than Rose. I mean, Rose has been good, but like I've stared long and hard about Burns. I have not clicked it yet, but it's got my attention.
Totally agree. Burns has been hitting the ball a lot better too. And he's a guy that my numbers typically tend to hate because the approach play can just get so volatile with him. And this is a golf course where this is one where he's rating out far better for some of that strength of field. But a lot of this is just like, this is a guy in Burns that tends to do his best work in lower scoring affairs. And you don't necessarily have that same question with him that you maybe do with Lowry, in fairness, with a guy like Matt Fitzpatrick or Justin Rose, where it feels like they actually get a bump when it's more difficult scoring conditions. Burns, unquestionably, until he proves himself in the contrary, seems like he gets a bump in some of these golf tournaments where you just have to go out and be super aggressive and score.
There is still a 25 hanging on Tommy Fleetwood out there, but 20 in most places. And we enter that next tier, which is pretty small. I mean, you get to the 60s very, very quickly here, Andy. It's basically Sahith, Keith Mitchell, Matt Kuchar, Adrian Meronk, and Adam Hadwin. That's it. Is there a click to be made there?
I do really like Keith Mitchell and Meronk. Okay. And you know, I'm not totally sold on the idea that this is going to be a bomb and gouge golf course, even though we did see that somewhat play out a little bit at St. George's. If you look at the leaderboard and suddenly it's populated by Rory and Finau and Burns and Keith Mitchell and Wyndham Clark, right? But I just like, I've liked Keith Mitchell. I've been so high on this guy. I remember writing him up in the season preview that I was doing on Rick Run Good and saying definitively that I thought that this guy was going to pick up a win this season. And there's been a lot of positives with him. There's been some negatives with him as well. It seems like he's starting to round back into form after he had kind of lost the irons for a couple starts there. And this is the type of golf course where I think if he's driving the ball really well, he's going to have tons and tons of opportunities to score, where maybe he doesn't even have to rely on his iron game as much, and he just ends up having a lot of short pitch shots into these greens. Same thing with Meronk. And you know, I'm typically okay with being late on guys that we don't have a lot of data on. This is one of the wonderful things about Rick Run Good, is that you can actually see how some of these guys are hitting the ball on the European Tour and what their stat profile actually looks like. Meronk is a lot like Keith Mitchell in the sense that he could just absolutely overpower this golf course with his driver. And he's got a pretty big history of actually, you know, he's won 3 times on the European Tour recently, you know, won the Irish Open late last year at 19 under par 2. I just think he's playing great golf. And, you know, I got him at 50 to 1. I would probably endorse him all the way down to 40, but those are the two guys. Keith Mitchell and Meronk were the two guys that I had circled.
Yeah, Meronk for sure. I like that. The other thing I like about Meronk is, so there's a couple other guys who have played, like, you know, 17 straight events on the European Tour and then try to come over and have to find their footing here very, very quickly. Meronk's been playing more on the PGA Tour recently than he has anywhere else, right? We saw him at the match play. We saw him at API and Honda and PGA Championship. I know those are majors and stuff too, but like, yeah, I mean, he's playing great golf all over the globe. Shouldn't be easy to get himself into pretty good, you know, routine for this week, anywhere from 40 to 50 to 1. And then we enter a range, and I don't know how you feel about this, Andy, but like, a lot of weeks we talk about like how far, like where the winner can come from. I mean, I think it's fairly wide open this week. You know, it's a golf course that shouldn't box out any short hitters. It's a golf course that we haven't really seen at all. And the field is, you know, outside of Rory McIlroy, you could argue the strength of it at the top. I think there are a lot of guys who are live this week.
Absolutely. I mean, the question that I always ask before I bet a bunch of long shots is like, is this a golf course that has the potential to totally separate elite tee to green play from moderate tee to green play? My answer in my breakdown of Oakdale is no, which means that a lot more players are probably live to win this event. I do think this is a golf course that's going to feature an extremely high greens and regulation percentage, which gives way to more players with somewhat of a lesser tee to green skill potentially being able to steal a tournament if they catch an insanely hot putter. I think that it's disingenuous to build a betting card without at least one Canadian this week. And so I would turn my attention actually to Nick Taylor. who's quietly been playing some better golf you can get at even a more appetizing price than Svensson and Mackenzie Hughes and Adam Hadwin, who I think is a bit overpriced. I actually think Nick Taylor is not necessarily getting the Canadian bump and is priced fairly. So him at, I think 75 to 1 is an interesting one to monitor, in my opinion.
If you can get so Eric Cole's interesting because he's as short as 50, as long as 70. And Eric, I love him. He's
kind of a flusher. I mean, he's just,
three top 25s in a row, doesn't get like caught up in the heat of the moment. I like it. I know it's like mini tour wins, but if you close out like 60 mini tour wins in your life, like you're a different breed of guy. And that's kind of where he's at. Triple digits starts with like Brendan Todd, Vincent Norman, Will Gordon. How deep are we willing to go?
Ben Martin's interesting. Akshay is a guy that I'm probably more inclined to take my chances on from a DraftKings perspective than really believing that this guy is ready to win a golf tournament right now. But I think, and then I don't think he's sneaking up on anybody. I think Ben Martin is a player that is going to have the attention of anybody that's looking at numbers and running statistical models, because he has been doing a lot of impressive things from a ball striking standpoint. But to me, I'm still focusing the vast majority of my betting card and, picking one or two guys in that, maybe a Burns or a Lowry and then Moronk and Mitchell. And I don't know about too many names down here. Did we mention Michael Kim? I like a lot too. I think he's closer to 80 though than 100. But what about you? Any big time long shots to shout out?
No, I think that I don't mind, but again, I've tried to be better at this year of like, I love this guy. Can he actually win? And if the answer is no, then you go to Jock market, or you go to the matchup market, or you go to the top 20 market or something like that, right? Where it's just not so crazy to ask out of him. Like Carson Young is as short as 90, as long as 150. He's been playing great. Is he probably going to win? Probably not. Is there a chance he finishes top 25? Absolutely. Dylan Wu, 150 to 1, has been playing great. Got into the US Open, played great yesterday on Monday to get through. I think he was in Springfield. Like that I like to see, but I think I would be better served probably finding those guys in alternative markets.
I would agree for the most part. I mean, I do think that maybe is this a tournament where some of the big names closer to the top of the odds board have their mind on something else right now. Yeah, it's possible. But if you're a lower rung PGA Tour player, do you not probably have a ton on your mind right now too? So, yeah, I mean, I think that the strategy of getting a little bit more honed in on the top of the board this year has been a lot more profitable when I've been willing to take the plunge in that direction.
Okay. Here's a couple of guys that I've just kind of picked out in the matchup market that we talked about. So here's Ben Martin, who is getting a plus 140 number on SH Kim. We talked about some of these other guys. Here's Dylan Wu at even money to Nate Lashley, and Carson Young at minus 130 to Austin Smotherman. So for those guys that we're talking about at the bottom of the board, I feel more comfortable firing away here than other places.
Definitely. I do like that Nick Taylor at plus money over Joseph Bramlett, who, again, I think the can this guy get to 22 under par thing is a bit subjective, but when you're as bad of a putter as Bramlett, give me Nick Taylor and that head to head 10 times out of 10. I do like, I have nothing really against Tommy Fleetwood this week. My numbers are a lot stronger right now on Lowry and Rose. And, you can get both those guys matched up against Fleetwood that I would give the edge on. Real quick, because I want to do one and done too, but like, where are you on Ludwig? We just haven't mentioned his name. And I know both of us are pretty reliant on the data. And again, like I said earlier, like I'm sometimes generally okay with being late on these guys, but like, is there a chance that this guy is like a top 30 golfer in the world now?
No, but I think that he like, I think there's a pretty darn good chance he finishes inside the top 30 this week.
Yeah.
He has played. I mean, he T24 the API, and he's very accomplished collegiate golfer. And these guys have never been more ready coming out of college than they are right now, and probably will continue to be in the future. So it's not like this is his first. It's not like it's his first tour start. It's his first start as a professional, which I think is a pretty different distinction. And yeah, I don't think he's going to win. I think he's going to be fine. And there was that matchup against, I think it was against Nikolai Højgaard, that I wouldn't mind taking him at -120.
Yeah, that's certainly fair. I think when I first looked at his pricing in the betting markets and DraftKings, I was like, man, this guy's overpriced. And then I kind of did a bit of a double take and looked at the rest of the field and was like, okay, maybe is he overpriced? So yeah, TBD, I'm excited for his debut. I mean, I really think this is a guy that if he looks good this week and maybe in a couple more starts in the next month or two, probably should be on the outside cusp consideration to be on the European Ryder Cup team.
Honestly, probably should. One and done, $9 million purse, very top heavy. We're at a weird part of the year where we've got a US Open and an elevated event coming up, and then we'll be in the playoffs before you know it. For us, so just to recap, last week I had Cantlay, you had Hideki.
Both T16s, right?
No, Hideki was a little bit better, I think, because Cantlay got 117, Hideki got 275. Hideki, though, I mean, I know there were like 40 guys within 2 shots, but Hideki, I would have been happy to have you get 3.6 million because it would have been very beneficial for me for Hideki closing that thing out last week.
Yeah, me too, man. 36-hole leader. And then
Nothing.
I'm in Northern California right now, as you see from my background, visiting my girlfriend tonight. So I didn't get to watch a ton of the golf, but it looked like Hideki was in prime position doing his classic vintage Hideki ball striking fest. And then things just got jungled up over the weekend at Memorial, where you had a bunch of really strange scores with guys ejecting left and right. So really bummed thought there was an outside chance I'd finally get that big win in the one and done this year, and what's been an absolutely disastrous season for me thus far. But, we trudge along. I have a plan for this week, and we have 2 more majors and 4 more elevated events.
That's right. General strategy for this week. It seems like there is going to be a lot of Corey Connors in Canada, 17% projected around off his football pool. There's 4 guys over 10%, Rose, Lowry, Burns rounding out the others. Then you get, single digits on everybody else, Fitzpatrick, Hatton, Fleetwood, Sahith rounding out the rest of the crew.
I think that, I think a lot of people still probably have Justin Rose, Corey Connors, and Shane Lowry. Maybe some people still have Burns and Fitzpatrick too. Hatton's probably starting to get used a little bit. The 3% on Cameron Young is probably the play if you have him.
Especially if you're chasing, right? Like, I don't love what I'm seeing, but he's 16 or 18 to 1 to win this thing. He is uber talented. And if you can get a really good number on that, like if 3%, like sure, happy to make up ground with that. I think objectively, like I would, if I was in most scenarios, I would just roll out Hatton, right? He's probably playing like the best golf. You're not saving him for anything. I've already used him in R1 and done, so I cannot. I used him at the match play.
I used him at Byron Nelson. Yeah.
So we don't even have him available, but I think that's kind of like objectively one of the better plays for our purposes. And again, I think there's some more risk here. I'm going to take Burns for us, which you have already used him
at Zurich.
Yeah.
Gosh, you still have Burns available, huh?
I do. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Justin Rose.
Love it. He's been great. He is like,
he's been great.
He would only go as far as his putter would allow him. And that's not the case anymore.
Not the case anymore. I think he finished top 5 at St. George's last year, just absolutely firing his way up the leaderboard on Sunday. And he's been playing some wonderful golf right now, and probably not going to bet him in the outright markets. Not sure I'm going to play him in DFS. So hopefully this is the correct way to utilize Team Rose.
This is the spot. All right. Rose for Andy. I'll take Sam Burns, and we'll see what happens. Andy, thank you for going a little bit deeper, a little extra credit for me today.
Absolutely. Anytime. I mean, I'm sure we both got a ton of our plates right now, with this being, probably one of the most momentous days in the history of golf. So, I applaud both of our efforts to put all that aside, hopefully give some solid information on the Canadian Open. And, we are 8 days away from what I believe to be the best major championship venue we may have ever seen. So I hope that doesn't get overshadowed, but we'll have a lot to talk about in the upcoming weeks.
Follow Andy on Twitter at ADPLax Sports. You can find me at RickRunGood. This has been your Canadian Open betting preview. Good luck.